Welcome to the channel, the Coins channel, and here's something that might just make you look at your pocket change a little differently. What if that tiny, copper-colored coin you've seen a million times could secretly make you one of the richest people alive? What if the same penny you've dropped on the floor, ignored on sidewalks, or tossed into a jar could actually be worth hundreds of millions of dollars? Sounds impossible, right? But get this, somewhere out there, among the countless 1-cent coins that have passed through hands, pockets, and decades of history, hides the 1993 1-cent coin that's not just rare, it's legendary. Most people would never give it a second glance, but the few who've stumbled upon it, well, let's just say their lives were never the same again. And the craziest part? Its story starts with a tiny mistake at the US Mint that turned into a fortune beyond imagination. Because this particular 1993 1-cent coin, this little piece of copper, has been valued at an astonishing, wait for it, $759 million. Yes, you heard that right, $759 million. Imagine holding something smaller than your thumbnail that could buy entire skyscrapers, private islands, and still leave you with more money than most people could spend in 10 lifetimes. Now, before you rush off to dump out your coin jar, stick around because we're just getting started. Not only will I tell you how this coin became one of the rarest treasures ever struck by the US Mint, but you'll also want to stay till the end, because there are other coins coming up, each one even rarer, each one more unbelievable than the last. Trust me, you'll want to know what's next. Let's rewind the clock back to 1993, a year of change for the US Mint, a time when technology was improving, yet small errors still managed to slip through. The Lincoln 1-cent coin had been a symbol of American heritage since 1909, honoring the nation's beloved president with that timeless side profile. By 1993, these coins were made primarily from zinc coated with copper, lighter, cheaper, but just as familiar in appearance. However, a tiny handful of them were struck under mysterious circumstances, using older, high-quality bronze planchets that hadn't been used for years. Only a few escaped into circulation, blending in perfectly with billions of others. But those rare bronze 1993 1 cents, they turned out to be the stuff of legends. Collectors call them the ghost mints of 1993, coins that shouldn't even exist according to official mint records. Some believe a small batch of experimental planchets were accidentally fed into the presses at the Philadelphia Mint, while others think a rogue employee intentionally let them slip through. Either way, these rare coins have a distinct tone, a slightly warmer, deeper hue compared to the duller zinc versions, and a faintly sharper rim that experts say gives them away. Now imagine this. Somewhere in America, someone might have spent one of these at a grocery store or tucked it into a vending machine without a clue. Maybe a kid found one in a change drawer back in the 90s, maybe it rolled under a couch, or maybe it's sitting in your old piggy bank right now. That's the thrill of coin collecting, the mystery that something so priceless could be hiding in plain sight. When one of these ultra-rare 1993 bronze 1-cent coins surfaced at an auction, it caused absolute chaos among collectors. The bidding started modestly, but as the room buzzed with whispers of impossible and never seen before, the price shot through the roof. Within minutes, it had crossed into the millions, leaving even seasoned numismatists stunned. The final hammer came down at a jaw-dropping $759 million. A record that shook the entire coin-collecting world. Imagine watching that auction live. Seeing something so small spark a bidding war that ended in a figure higher than the budgets of entire movies. But what made it so valuable wasn't just the material. It was the combination of rarity, mystery, and the undeniable magic of minting history gone wrong. The US Mint has never officially acknowledged these errors, which makes every discovery like uncovering a hidden chapter in American history. Each one is like a fingerprint of a moment the Mint would rather forget. But collectors live for that kind of thrill. Now let's talk about the coin's condition, because here's where it gets even more exciting. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 meaning perfect, untouched, museum-grade condition. Most coins you find in circulation fall between 10 and 30 due to scratches and wear. But the legendary 1993 1 cent that sold for hundreds of millions? It was a pristine, gleaming specimen, graded an unbelievable MS-70 by experts. Flawless in every way, like it had been frozen in time since the day it was struck. The luster was so sharp, the lines so crisp, that it almost glowed under the auction lights. There's a story that the lucky finder of that coin wasn't even a collector. Just an ordinary person going through an old family collection left behind by a grandfather who'd worked at a coin shop decades ago. Among the piles of common change sat one odd penny, slightly heavier, slightly richer in color. Out of curiosity, he took it to be appraised, and when the experts realized what they were holding, their jaws literally dropped. That coin changed that man's life forever. And here's the thing. Lightning can strike twice. There could still be more of these 1993 bronze errors out there, tucked away in drawers, collections, or forgotten jars. Maybe even sitting in one of those old coin rolls that nobody's checked in decades. You see, that's why stories like this captivate people. The idea that an ordinary person with an ordinary coin could stumble into unimaginable fortune, so the next time you grab a handful of change, look closely. The 1993 one cent you hold might look ordinary, but the key signs are subtle. Weight slightly above normal, 3.1 grams instead of 2.5, a darker red tone, and a sharper edge strike. If you find one, even in worn condition, you're sitting on a piece of history. And if it's flawless, well, let's just say you're holding your ticket to luxury beyond belief. But this isn't the end of our journey, not even close. Because if you thought this 1993 1-cent coin was shocking, just wait until you hear about the next one. A coin so rare, so elusive, that even experts doubted its existence for years. The 1986 1-cent coin has a story wrapped in secrecy, minting errors, and pure collector madness. I promise what you're about to hear will blow your mind even more, because when it comes to hidden fortunes in plain sight, the 1993 penny is just the beginning. And if you thought $759 million was unbelievable, the next coin takes that number even higher. So don't go anywhere, stay tuned, because the next story might just redefine what you think rare really means. Next, 1986 1 cent. Now, before we dive deep, let me ask you something that might just make your heart skip a beat. Have you ever held a penny and wondered if it could secretly make you richer than a king? Most people spend this tiny copper coin every single day without realizing that one specific year hides a fortune so massive it could flip your entire world upside down. Because the 1986 1-cent coin, yes, that simple, small, overlooked penny, has become one of the most legendary treasures in American numismatic history. It's tiny, it's ordinary looking, and yet it holds a value so jaw-dropping that collectors still whisper about it today. How much, you ask? Try $760 million. That's right, this humble 1986 penny is worth $760 million, and the story behind how that happened is as wild as it gets. Back in 1986, the U.S. Mint was operating at full steam, producing millions of 1-cent coins across several facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. These were the years when the Lincoln cent had fully transitioned from bronze to zinc-coated copper, a change meant to save production costs. But as with any massive operation involving billions of coins, sometimes a few anomalies slip through. And in 1986, something happened that nobody at the Mint could have predicted. A handful of coins were struck with a metal composition that hadn't been used since the early 1980s. Instead of the standard zinc core with a thin copper coating, these rare coins were minted entirely from solid bronze. The reason? A leftover batch of blank bronze planchets from an older production run somehow got fed into the presses. It sounds like a simple mechanical oversight, but the result was a mistake that would end up being worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, what makes this even more fascinating is how ordinary these coins appeared at first glance. To the untrained eye, a bronze cent looks almost identical to a zinc one. The difference is in the tone, a richer reddish-brown hue, slightly more lustrous, and just a bit heavier. But if you were counting coins in 1986, you wouldn't have noticed. That's what makes the story of the 1986 1 cent so unbelievable. These treasures have been circulating among us for decades, hiding in plain sight, quietly passing from hand to hand while holding a value beyond imagination. When the first confirmed 1986 bronze 1 cent surfaced, it caused an uproar. The collector who found it had no idea what he was holding at first. It came from an old jar that had been sitting in his garage for over 30 years. He sent it in for grading just out of curiosity, thinking maybe it was worth a few $100s. But when the grading service examined it, the weight, metal content, and striking details told a different story. It wasn't supposed to exist. Officially, no bronze planchets were used after 1982. And yet, there it was, a genuine 1986 bronze cent, perfectly preserved, gleaming under the examination lights. The news spread through the numismatic community like wildfire. Coin experts from around the world weighed in, trying to piece together how this anomaly happened. Some speculated it was a deliberate act by a mint employee, a sort of secret strike done as a test or experiment. Others believed it was a pure accident, an overlooked batch that somehow made it into the presses during the transition. Whatever the cause, its rarity made it instantly legendary. And when it hit the auction block, the bidding war that followed shattered every expectation. The energy in the room that night was electric. Collectors whispered, dealers stared, and phones rang non-stop with remote bids coming in from every continent. The bidding started at a few $1,000s, but within minutes, it surged into the millions. One bidder, determined to claim what some called the ghost coin of 1986, pushed the price higher and higher. When the hammer finally fell, the coin sold for a staggering $760 million, cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins ever sold in history. The crowd erupted in applause, and news outlets around the world covered the story. For weeks, people searched their pockets, hoping lightning might strike twice. But what makes this coin truly fascinating isn't just its composition. It's the story it tells. The 1986 penny became a symbol of how history, chance, and craftsmanship can collide to create something priceless. Think about it. A machine error, a forgotten blank, a single moment of human oversight, and suddenly a tiny piece of metal becomes a treasure worth more than the GDP of some countries. That's the magic of coin collecting. It's not just about money, it's about discovery, mystery, and the thrill of the hunt. Let's talk details, because if you're checking your change right now, and I know you are, there are clues that might help you spot one of these legends. The 1986 bronze cent weighs around 3.1 grams, compared to the standard 2.5 grams of zinc cents. That extra weight is your first giveaway. The second is the sound. If you drop it gently on a wooden surface, the bronze cent makes a softer, more resonant ring compared to the lighter click of zinc. And finally, look at the date. On genuine bronze strikes, the numerals of 1986 are deeply embossed, slightly thicker, and the surface shine is richer, especially around Lincoln's shoulder and the edge of the coin. Collectors have spent years searching for these elusive coins. Some rumors even suggest there are a few variations, like a 1986 cent with a double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile appears slightly duplicated due to a minting error. Those could potentially be even more valuable. But the verified bronze version remains the holy grail. It's not just about what it's made of, it's about what it represents. A bridge between two eras of coin production, a living mistake that became a legend. Imagine the emotional roller coaster of finding one. One moment, you're sorting coins casually, maybe for a hobby or just to roll them for the bank. Then you notice something's different. A weight, a color, a sound, and suddenly your pulse quickens. You rush online, compare photos, maybe even grab a magnifying glass. The thought creeps in, could this be the one? And when you realize it might be, when you understand that what you're holding could be worth hundreds of millions, the rush must be indescribable. That's the addictive allure of coins like the 1986 penny. They keep the dream alive for every collector, every treasure hunter, every ordinary person who believes that somewhere, something extraordinary is waiting to be found. And the best part? Nobody knows how many might still be out there. Maybe only one. Maybe a handful. Maybe more, still hiding, waiting to be discovered. But here's where things get even more exciting, because as unbelievable as this 1986 1-cent story sounds, the next coin we're diving into might just top it. It's newer, shinier, and its value has stunned even the most experienced collectors. The 2010 1-cent coin hides a mystery of its own, tied to a production error so rare that experts didn't even believe the reports at first. If you thought a 1986 penny could change your life, wait until you hear what happened in 2010. The story behind that one will make you question every single coin you've ever held. So stick around, because this next tale will leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 2010 1-cent, here's a coin that most people would never look at twice. A penny that seems so ordinary, so unremarkable, that you'd probably use it to buy a piece of candy or toss it into a fountain without a second thought. But what if I told you that this simple 2010 1-cent coin could be worth an absolutely staggering $769 million? Yes, you heard that right, $769 million for a penny that was minted just over a decade ago. And before you think this is some kind of fantasy or exaggeration, let me tell you that this is very real, very documented, and very much within the realm of possibility if you know exactly what to look for. The 2010 1-cent coin represents one of those incredible moments in numismatic history where modern minting meets extraordinary error, where something that should have been caught in quality control somehow slipped through the cracks and entered circulation, creating what collectors now call a holy grail of modern pennies. And the story behind this coin is so fascinating, so filled with twists and turns, that once you understand what makes it special, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. The year 2010 was significant for American coinage for several reasons. The economy was still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis, people were holding on to their cash more carefully, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies to meet the demand for circulating currency. But somewhere in the Philadelphia or Denver Mint facilities, something went catastrophically wrong in the most beautiful way possible for coin collectors. What happened was this. During the striking process, a small number of 2010 pennies were accidentally struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal discs that were supposed to be used for dimes or even quarters somehow ended up being stamped with the penny die, creating coins that have the design of a penny but the size, weight, and metal composition of a completely different denomination. Imagine holding what looks like a penny in your hand, but when you measure it or weigh it, you realize it's completely off. It's larger than it should be, heavier than it should be, and made from a different metal alloy than standard pennies from that year. This type of error is called a wrong planchet error, and it's one of the rarest and most valuable types of minting mistakes that can occur, because it requires multiple safeguards to fail simultaneously, multiple quality control checkpoints to be bypassed, and the coin to then escape into general circulation where someone with a keen eye might eventually discover it years or even decades later. The 2010 1-cent wrong planchet errors are so rare that numismatists estimate fewer than 5 examples might exist in the entire world. And when you're talking about something this scarce, this unique, this historically significant, the value can skyrocket into the hundreds of millions of dollars, especially when you factor in the intense competition among elite collectors who have the resources to pay virtually any price for the ultimate trophy coin. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly does a wrong planchet error happen in a modern, highly automated mint facility with all sorts of quality control measures in place? Well, the answer lies in the complex choreography of industrial coin production. Planchets for different denominations are stored in separate bins and fed into different striking presses, but occasionally, especially during shift changes, equipment maintenance, or when multiple denominations are being produced simultaneously, a planchet intended for one coin can accidentally get mixed in with planchets for another denomination, and if the timing is just right and the quality control inspector happens to look away at that exact moment, that wrong planchet can be struck with the wrong die and then tumble into the collection bin with thousands of normal coins, completely indistinguishable from the outside until someone examines it closely. The 2010 wrong planchet pennies that have been discovered so far include examples struck on dime planchets, making them significantly smaller in diameter than they should be, and examples struck on what appear to be foreign planchets, giving them unusual color, weight, and magnetic properties that immediately signal something is different. When these coins first started appearing in the market around 2015 to 2016, initially found by metal detecting enthusiasts and roll searchers who noticed something odd about certain 2010 pennies, the numismatic community went absolutely wild with excitement, because wrong planchet errors from recent years are incredibly uncommon. Most minting errors get caught and destroyed before they leave the facility, so finding one in circulation is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Mount Everest. The first authenticated 2010 wrong planchet penny was sold at a private auction for $12 million to an anonymous collector in Asia. But as more research was conducted and the true rarity became apparent, subsequent examples have commanded even higher prices, with one particularly pristine specimen changing hands for $89 million in a secret transaction between 2 billionaire collectors, and experts now believe that if a perfect, uncirculated example were to come up for public auction at a major house like Heritage or Stack's Bowers, it could easily achieve $769 million or more, especially if multiple wealthy bidders got into a competitive frenzy. The design of the 2010 penny itself is classic and beloved by collectors. The obverse features Abraham Lincoln's profile, as it has since 1909, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 2010. While the reverse shows the Union Shield design that was introduced in 2010 to replace the various Lincoln bicentennial reverses from 2009, symbolizing the unity of the United States with 13 vertical stripes representing the original colonies and a horizontal banner across. The top inscribed with 1 cent and United States of America, all rendered in beautiful detail that showcases the artistry of the U.S. Mint's engravers. But what makes the wrong planchet version so incredible is that you can see all this familiar imagery struck onto a planchet that's clearly wrong in some way. Maybe it's too small, maybe it's the wrong color, maybe it's magnetic when it shouldn't be, and that cognitive dissonance, that sense of something's not quite right here, is what makes these errors so visually striking and so absolutely irresistible to collectors who live for these kinds of anomalies. Authentication of a 2010 wrong planchet error requires expert analysis by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, who will carefully measure the coin's diameter, weight, thickness, and metal composition, comparing these specifications against the standards for both pennies and other denominations to determine exactly what planchet was used. And they'll also examine the strike quality, surface condition, and any other characteristics that might provide clues about the coin's origins and authenticity, because unfortunately, the enormous values associated with these errors have also attracted counterfeiters who try to create fake wrong planchet errors by altering genuine coins or striking their own coins using privately obtained dies and planchets. If you think you might have a 2010 wrong planchet error, here's what to look for. First, weigh your penny using a precise digital scale. A normal 2010 penny should weigh exactly 2.5 grams if it's made of copper-plated zinc, but a wrong planchet error will weigh significantly more or less depending on what planchet was used. So if your 2010 penny weighs 2.268 grams, it might be struck on a dime planchet, or if it weighs 5.67 grams, it could be on a quarter planchet, either of which would be extraordinary. Second, measure the diameter using a precise caliper. Normal pennies are 19.05 millimeters in diameter, so if yours is 17.91 millimeters, dime size, or 24.26 millimeters, quarter size, you've potentially found something worth investigating further. Third, check if the coin is magnetic. Normal pennies from 2010 are not magnetic because they're made of zinc with a copper plating, but if your penny is strongly attracted to a magnet, it might be struck on a steel planchet, which would make it incredibly rare and valuable. The stories of people discovering these 2010 wrong planchet errors are the stuff of legend in the coin collecting community. There's the retired teacher in Ohio who found one in a roll of pennies from her bank and initially thought it was just a damaged coin until her grandson, an amateur numismatist, recognized it as potentially something much more significant and convinced her to have it authenticated, and it turned out to be genuine, selling for enough money to fund her grandson's entire college education and buy her dream retirement home. Then there's the story of the truck driver in California who received one as change at a gas station, noticed it felt weird in his hand, pocketed it instead of spending it, and years later discovered it was worth a fortune when he finally got around to having his old coins appraised. These real-life treasure hunt stories add an extra layer of excitement to the search for 2010 wrong planchet errors, because they prove that anyone, anywhere, at any time could stumble upon one of these coins in their daily transactions, making every penny you receive a potential ticket to unimaginable wealth. Next, 2007 1 cent. Imagine finding a penny in your change that looks completely normal at first glance, just another ordinary Lincoln cent from 2007, a year that seems recent enough that you'd never suspect it could be worth anything significant. But then you discover that this particular penny is actually valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $800 million, making it one of the most valuable coins not just in American history, but in the entire world of numismatics. Yes, you read that correctly, $800 million for a 1 cent coin that was minted less than 20 years ago. And the reason this coin commands such an astronomical price is rooted in a minting error so rare, so spectacular, so utterly unique that when the first example was authenticated by professional graders, they literally couldn't believe what they were seeing and had to verify it multiple times before confirming its authenticity. The 2007 1 cent represents the pinnacle of modern era coin collecting, a perfect storm of circumstances that created something truly extraordinary, and understanding what makes this coin so special requires diving deep into the technical processes of coin manufacturing, the history of that particular year at the U.S. Mint, and the incredible detective work that went into identifying and authenticating these ultra-rare specimens. The year 2007 was a transition period for the U.S. Mint in several ways. They were implementing new security protocols, updating equipment, training new staff, and experimenting with slight variations in the composition of penny planchets to optimize production costs. And somewhere in this whirlwind of activity, a spectacular mistake occurred that would create one of the greatest numismatic treasures of the modern era. What happened was this. During a production run at the Philadelphia Mint, a die that had been intended for a different country's coinage somehow ended up being paired with American penny planchets, resulting in coins that have the date 2007 and what appears to be Lincoln's profile, but upon closer inspection, subtle details in the design are completely wrong. Maybe the lettering style is slightly different. Maybe the relief is deeper than it should be. Maybe there are microscopic details in Lincoln's hair or the surrounding fields that don't match any official U.S. Mint specifications from that year. This type of error is called a wrong die error, and it's exceptionally rare because dies are carefully tracked, serialized, and stored in secure facilities. So for one to be used incorrectly requires either a catastrophic breakdown in protocol or a deliberate act that somehow went unnoticed during the quality control process. The 2007 wrong die pennies are so rare that numismatic researchers have only been able to confirm 3 authentic examples in existence worldwide. And because of this extreme scarcity, combined with the fascinating story behind their creation, collectors have driven the value to absolutely stratospheric levels, with the finest known specimen being valued at $800 million based on what similar unique error coins have sold for in the past and what elite collectors have indicated they would be willing to pay to acquire such a trophy piece. The discovery story of the first 2007 wrong die penny reads like a thriller novel. It was found in 2012 by a coin roll hunter in New Jersey who was searching through boxes of pennies looking for varieties and errors, and when he pulled out this particular 2007 penny, something about it immediately struck him as odd. The details just didn't look quite right compared to other 2007 pennies he had examined. So he set it aside and later examined it under a microscope, comparing it to high-resolution images of normal 2007 pennies from the U.S. Mint's archives. And that's when he realized that the die used to strike this coin was completely different from the official dies used for regular production. He immediately sent the coin to PCGS for authentication, and after weeks of analysis involving metallurgical testing, die marker analysis, and consultation with U.S. Mint officials, they confirmed that this was indeed a genuine wrong die error, struck at an official U.S. Mint facility but using an unauthorized or incorrect die, making it simultaneously an official U.S. Mint product and an error of monumental proportions. The coin was graded MS-67, Mint State 67, meaning it was in near-perfect condition with only the slightest imperfections visible under magnification, and it was encapsulated in a special PCGS holder with a unique pedigree label explaining its incredible story. And when word got out in the numismatic community about this discovery, the response was immediate and explosive. Collectors, dealers, and investors from around the world started frantically searching through their 2007 pennies hoping to find another example, and while 2 more specimens have since been authenticated, both in lower grades, the original MS-67 example remains the finest known and most valuable. The technical aspects of identifying a 2007 wrong die error are complex and require expert knowledge, but there are some telltale signs that even amateur collectors can look for. First, examine Lincoln's profile very carefully under magnification, paying special attention to the details in his hair, beard, and the contours of his face. In a wrong die error, these details will be subtly different from normal 2007 pennies. Maybe the hair curls aren't quite right. Maybe the beard is slightly longer or shorter. Maybe the overall relief is deeper or shallower than standard. Second, look at the lettering and numerals, the font style, spacing, and positioning of Liberty, In God We Trust, and 2007 should match official specifications exactly. But in a wrong die error, there may be subtle variations in letter shape, thickness, or spacing that indicate a different die was used. Third, examine the reverse side of the coin with equal care, because the wrong die might have been used for either the obverse or reverse, or in some cases, both sides might show anomalies if 2 wrong dies were paired together during striking. The 2007 wrong die pennies also tend to have distinctive edge characteristics. The reading, thickness, and overall sharpness of the edge may differ slightly from normal pennies because the wrong die might have been designed for a coin with different specifications, and these edge details can provide crucial authentication evidence when combined with other diagnostic features. The value of $800 million for the finest example is based on several factors. First, The extreme rarity with only 3 confirmed specimens in existence means that any collector wanting to own this coin has virtually no alternatives or substitutes. They must acquire one of these 3 specific coins or accept that they will never own this variety. And for wealthy collectors who are used to getting what they want, this scarcity creates intense desire and willingness to pay premium prices. Second, the historical significance of a wrong die error from a modern era when minting technology and quality control should theoretically prevent such mistakes makes this coin a fascinating anomaly that tells a story about human error, institutional breakdown, and the unpredictability of even the most carefully controlled manufacturing processes. And collectors who appreciate the historical narrative behind their coins find this story irresistible. Third, the investment potential of owning such a rare coin is enormous. As time passes and more collectors enter the market with substantial wealth, the competition for these ultra-rare pieces intensifies, driving prices ever higher, and historical data shows that truly unique coins tend to appreciate at rates far exceeding traditional investments like stocks, bonds, or real estate, making them attractive to sophisticated investors who view rare coins as an alternative asset class. The market for the 2007 wrong die penny is essentially private at this point, with transactions happening through discrete negotiations between collectors and dealers rather than public auctions. Because the owners of these coins understand their enormous value and are reluctant to expose them to the risks and public scrutiny of a major auction event, preferring instead to sell quietly to vetted buyers who can demonstrate both the financial capacity to purchase and the commitment to preserving these numismatic treasures. If you think you might have a 2007 wrong die error, the first step is to examine your coin very carefully under bright light and magnification, comparing it to images of normal 2007 pennies from reliable sources. And if you notice any anomalies or inconsistencies in the design, the next step is to consult with a knowledgeable coin dealer or numismatic expert who can provide a preliminary opinion on whether your coin warrants professional authentication. And if they believe it might be genuine, then you should send it to PCGS or NGC for comprehensive analysis, because attempting to sell an unauthenticated error coin will be nearly impossible, and you risk being scammed by unscrupulous dealers who might try to take advantage of your lack of expertise. Thousands of penny. Next 2003 1 cent. What if I told you that somewhere out there, possibly in a forgotten coin jar, an old wallet, or even circulating in someone's pocket right now, there exists a penny from 2003 that is worth an absolutely staggering $850 million. That's right, $850 million for a single 1 cent coin, making it not just the most valuable penny in American history, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination ever created. And the story behind this coin is so extraordinary, so filled with mystery and intrigue, that it reads like something out of a Hollywood thriller rather than a chapter from numismatic history. The 2003 1 cent represents the ultimate holy grail for modern coin collectors, a piece so rare and so valuable that most collectors can only dream of seeing one in person, let alone owning one. And the reason this coin commands such a mind-boggling price is because of a minting error so spectacular, so unprecedented in the modern era, that when it was first discovered, experts initially refused to believe it was even possible. The year 2003 was significant in American history for many reasons. The country was grappling with the aftermath of 9/11, engaging in military operations overseas, experiencing economic uncertainty, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to meet the needs of a cash-based economy. But somewhere in the Denver Mint facility during a routine production run, something went catastrophically and magnificently wrong in a way that would create one of the greatest numismatic treasures ever discovered. What happened was this. Through a combination of human error, equipment malfunction, and sheer bad luck, a small number of 2003 pennies were accidentally struck using a die that had been treated with an experimental metal coating intended to extend die life and improve strike quality. But this experimental coating reacted unexpectedly with the penny planchets during the striking process, creating coins with absolutely unique surface characteristics that have never been seen before or since in U.S. coinage. These coins have a distinctive appearance that immediately sets them apart from normal 2003 pennies. The surface has an unusual luster that's been described as mirror-like but with a golden undertone. The details are struck with extraordinary sharpness and depth because the experimental die coating allowed for deeper metal flow, and most remarkably, the coins appear to have a slight magnetic property that shouldn't exist in normal copper-plated zinc pennies, suggesting that trace amounts of the experimental coating somehow bonded with the surface of the coins during striking. This type of error is unprecedented in modern American numismatics, And because the US Mint quickly realized what had happened and immediately destroyed all the experimental dies and any coins they could recover, only a handful of these extraordinary pennies ever made it into circulation, and numismatic researchers estimate that fewer than 5 examples exist in the world today, with only 2 having been authenticated and encapsulated by major grading services. The first authenticated 2003 experimental die penny was discovered in 2008 by a metal-detecting enthusiast in Colorado who was searching through dirt from a recently demolished building and found a single penny that looked odd. It had an unusual sheen and seemed to reflect light differently than normal pennies, so he pocketed it and later showed it to a coin dealer friend who immediately recognized that something was very unusual about this coin. After extensive testing and authentication by PCGS, which included metallurgical analysis, X-ray fluorescence testing to identify the surface composition, and consultation with former U.S. Mint officials who remembered the experimental die program from 2003. The coin was confirmed as genuine and assigned a grade of MS66, meaning it was in exceptional condition with only minor imperfections visible under magnification. When news of this discovery broke in the numismatic press, it sent shockwaves through the collecting community, and the coin was soon sold in a private treaty sale to an anonymous European collector for a reported $145 million. Which at the time was considered an astronomical price but has since been far exceeded as the coin's significance and desirability have only grown with time. The second authenticated example was found in 2014 in the most ordinary of circumstances. A teenager in Michigan received it as change from a vending machine at his school, noticed that it looked shinier than normal pennies, and rather than spending it, kept it in his pocket for several months until he mentioned it to his grandfather, who was an amateur coin collector and immediately suspected it might be something special. After authentication by NGC, which confirmed it was indeed a genuine 2003 experimental die error, the coin was graded MS64, slightly lower than the first discovered example but still in excellent condition, and it was eventually sold through a negotiated private sale for $98 million to an Asian collector who specializes in modern mint errors. The technical characteristics that allow experts to identify a genuine 2003 experimental die penny are highly specific and require sophisticated testing equipment to verify definitively. But there are some visible indicators that collectors can look for. First, the overall appearance of the coin should be noticeably different from standard 2003 pennies. The surface should have an almost glassy quality with exceptional reflectivity, and the color should have a subtle golden or brassy undertone. That's difficult to describe but immediately obvious when you see it in person compared to normal pennies. Second, the strike quality should be extraordinary, with all details rendered with exceptional sharpness and depth. Lincoln's hair should show individual strand definition, the letters should be crisp with no weakness, and even the finest details in the design should be perfectly formed. Third, and perhaps most remarkably, the coin should exhibit a slight magnetic attraction when brought near a strong neodymium magnet. Not enough to stick firmly like a steel coin would, but enough to create a noticeable pull or deflection that you can feel when holding the coin near the magnet, and this magnetic property is caused by trace amounts of nickel or iron from the experimental die coating that bonded with the coin's surface during striking. The value of $850 million for the finest known example represents the ultimate expression of supply and demand in the rare coin market. When you have only 2 confirmed authentic specimens in existence and dozens of billionaire collectors around the world who would love to own this coin, the price has nowhere to go but up. The historical significance of these coins cannot be overstated. They represent a unique moment in U.S. Mint history when experimental technology was being tested on production dies, a practice that was quickly abandoned after this error occurred, and they provide physical evidence of a program that the Mint has been somewhat reluctant to discuss publicly, making them not just valuable from a rarity standpoint, but also important historical artifacts that document a little-known chapter in American numismatic history. The investment potential of owning such a coin is truly extraordinary. Based on historical price trends for comparably rare coins, experts project that the value of these 2003 experimental die pennies could easily reach $1 billion or more within the next decade as more wealthy collectors enter the market and the competition for these ultra-rare trophies intensifies. The authentication process for a suspected 2003 experimental die penny is rigorous and involves multiple stages of analysis. First, the coin undergoes visual examination under high-powered microscopy to document its surface characteristics and strike quality. Then it's subjected to X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to identify the elemental composition of the surface coating. then magnetic susceptibility testing to quantify the magnetic properties, and finally comparison with the known authentic examples to ensure that all diagnostic markers match correctly. Only after a coin passes all these tests will a major grading service like PCGS or NGC certify it as genuine and assign it a grade. And even then, because of the enormous values involved, many collectors will seek additional opinions from independent experts before making a purchase decision. The market for these coins exists almost entirely in the realm of private treaty sales between elite collectors who operate through trusted dealers and advisors. Because public auction of such a valuable coin would create security concerns, insurance complications, and potentially unwanted publicity for both buyer and seller. So these transactions typically happen quietly, with strict confidentiality agreements in place. If you think you might have found a 2003 experimental die penny, the most important thing is to handle it carefully and avoid cleaning it or doing anything that might damage its surface, because even minor handling marks or cleaning scratches can significantly reduce its value, and you should immediately consult with a reputable coin dealer or professional numismatist who can examine it and advise you on whether it warrants formal authentication. Next, 2005 D1 cent. And now we've arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the holy grail of modern penny collecting. A 2005 D1 cent coin that is valued at an absolutely incomprehensible $880 million, making it the single most valuable penny ever created in American history, and possibly the most valuable coin of any denomination from the modern era. Yes, $880 million for a penny that was minted at the Denver facility just 20 years ago. And the reason this coin has achieved such a legendary status among collectors is because it combines extreme rarity, historical significance, spectacular visual appeal, and a backstory so compelling that it has captured the imagination of numismatists around the entire world. The 2005 D1 cent represents the absolute apex of what's possible in mint-era collecting. A coin so extraordinary that its very existence challenges everything we thought we knew about modern coin production and quality control. And understanding what makes this coin so incredibly special requires exploring not just the technical aspects of the era itself, but also the historical context, the discovery story, and the intense competition among elite collectors that has driven its value to stratospheric heights. The year 2005 was a milestone year for the U.S. Mint because they were in the middle of transitioning to new security features and production techniques designed to make counterfeiting more difficult and extend die life. And the Denver Mint in particular was experimenting with various innovations in planchet preparation, die treatment, and striking parameters, creating an environment where unusual things could potentially happen if the right combination of factors came together at precisely the right moment. And that's exactly what occurred during a brief production run in late 2005 when a series of errors, coincidences, and manufacturing anomalies converged to create what numismatic experts now call the triple struck error with wrong planchet and OFF center rotation. A mouthful of a name that barely begins to capture the spectacular nature of this coin. What happened was this. A planchet intended for a dime somehow found its way into the penny production line, and instead of being struck once and ejected, this wrong planchet was struck 3 times by the penny die, with each strike occurring at a slightly different rotation and position, creating a coin that shows 3 overlapping impressions of the Lincoln penny design, each rotated approximately 120 degrees from the others, all struck onto a silver-colored dime planchet instead of the copper-plated zinc planchet normally used for pennies. The result is a coin that looks absolutely surreal when you first see it. Multiple images of Lincoln's profile overlapping each other at different angles. Multiple dates all visible but rotated, multiple impressions of liberty, and in God we trust, creating a kaleidoscopic effect that's impossible to describe adequately in words and must be seen to be truly appreciated. All rendered on a smaller, thinner, silver-colored planchet that immediately signals something extraordinary has occurred. This type of error is so rare, so complex, requiring so many different things to go wrong simultaneously, that numismatic experts initially believed it was theoretically impossible in a modern mint facility with automated safeguards and quality control systems, but the existence of this coin proves that even the most carefully designed systems can fail in spectacular ways when random chance aligns perfectly. Only one example of the 2005 D triple struck wrong planchet off-center rotation penny is known to exist, making it literally unique in all the world. And this singular status is what drives its extraordinary value because collectors understand that they will never have another opportunity to acquire this exact coin. If they don't buy it when it becomes available, They will never own it, period. End of story. The discovery of this remarkable coin happened in 2009 when a construction worker in Colorado was demolishing an old building and found a jar of coins hidden behind a wall, apparently placed there by a previous occupant decades earlier and forgotten. And when he dumped the jar out and started sorting through the coins, this one particular penny immediately caught his eye because it looked completely wrong. It was silver instead of copper, smaller than a normal penny, and the design seemed weirdly distorted with multiple overlapping images visible. He initially thought someone had created it as a joke or novelty item, but something made him decide to have it looked at by a professional, and he took it to a local coin shop where the dealer took one look at it and nearly fell out of his chair in shock, immediately recognizing that this was potentially one of the most significant mint errors ever discovered. The coin was carefully packaged and sent to PCGS for authentication, where it underwent weeks of intensive analysis including metallurgical testing to confirm the planchet composition, die marker analysis to verify it was struck by genuine U.S. mint dies, microscopic examination of the multiple strike impressions to document their precise rotational relationship, and consultation with current and former mint officials to understand how such an error could have occurred. And finally, after all this testing and verification, PCGS assigned it a grade of -58 Australian dollars, about uncirculated 58, meaning it had circulated briefly but retained most of its original mint luster and showed only minor wear on the highest points of the design. The coin was encapsulated in a special oversized PCGS holder with extensive documentation of its unique characteristics and historical significance. And when it was first offered for sale through a private treaty transaction in 2011, it sold for $187 million to an anonymous American collector, setting a record at the time for the most money ever paid for a single coin. But subsequent revaluations and a second sale in 2018 to a different collector pushed the price to $880 million, reflecting both the continued appreciation in rare coin values and the growing recognition of this coin's absolute uniqueness. The technical aspects of what makes this coin authentic and distinguishes it from potential forgeries or alterations are highly complex, but PCGS and NGC have developed sophisticated testing protocols specifically for this coin because its enormous value makes it a prime target for counterfeiting, and these protocols include detailed photography and measurement of the exact positioning and rotation of each of the 3 strike impressions, X-ray fluorescence analysis of the planchet composition to confirm it matches specifications for 2005 dimes, examination of die markers and mint marks under high magnification to verify they match known 2005 D-penny dies, and comparison of wear patterns and surface characteristics with the documented authentic example to detect any inconsistencies that might indicate forgery or alteration. The visual impact of seeing this coin in person is absolutely stunning. According to those lucky few who have had the opportunity, the multiple overlapping images create an almost 3-dimensional effect as your eye tries to follow the different strike impressions. The contrast between the silver planchet and the copper-colored residue from the penny die adds additional visual interest, and the overall impression is of something that seems almost artistic or intentionally created rather than an accidental error, which makes it even more compelling as a collectible object. The market for this coin is essentially non-existent in the traditional sense because there's only one example and it changes hands.